This kind of segues really well into the fact that you have the waves methods, which is actually about bringing to surface what are your wants, what are your whys, and being more conscious about it. So I'd love for you to expand on the waves method and how we can apply it in our lives to get closer to this $1 million flip-flop ideology.
Yeah, for sure. So the waves method starts with your why. And keep in mind as we go through these, everything you're building here, it's not only a deep look at yourself, but it's a decision filter. So look at it through that lens. But you start with your why. And when I ask my private clients in a coaching session, or if we're on a workshop, like we were in a workshop not too long ago, it is, why do you get up every morning? But it can't involve money, power, or notoriety. And when you add those three qualifiers, typically you see kind of a blank look go over, well, why am I doing it if it's not for money? Is there another way to operate in the world? So people that have never experienced that, it's an eye opener. But your why is that passionate reason you get up every morning other than a paycheck. And the A in waves is authenticity. And the reason I put that second is I found going through values with people, and this is before it was named the waves method, right? When you're going through values with people, they're going to tell you things, and I'm going to use the example of a mother. She's going to put down family as one of her values. Just because you're a mom doesn't mean family has to be your number one value. It's okay to be selfish. We're talking about your life, not your life as necessarily a mom, not your kid's life, not your dad's life, not your pastor's life, not your coworker's life, your life. So the authenticity piece of that is being really brutally honest with yourself about yourself, which is not easy to do. And in the book, we give all kinds of ways to we call it an authenticity accelerator. So it's ways to develop that. Because as you go into the V in waves values, your core values are what make you tick, right? And we just talked about my top three: freedom, autonomy, and connection. And as you look at your values, you want to rank them. And that's what we do in the waves method. So if you look at a list of 1,000 values, you're going to pick out 30 or 40 that resonate with you. And they're completely different for everybody. And part of what I love about what I do is I get to see these values and then understand the backstory on it at a really deep level. So that's part of my why. But you want to rank them and you want to group them. So if you have 40 or 50 values, they can't be actionable. You need 4 or 5 that say, okay, this is who I am. This is how I show up in the world. And then what we do with that is we explore. So that's the exploration in it. And typically I'm working with a client for 12 months. We do workshops that are just a couple hours. And then we have courses and other things that do continuously elevated, deeper dives and additional accountability. And as you can see, the accountability piece is really important, because if you write down family, you're doing this by yourself in your bedroom while you're reading the book, nobody's going to call you on that and say, why? And I treat it like I'm a toddler. Why? Well, because of this. Why? Because of this. Why? Because of this. And then I guess it's not my most important value. So that light bulb goes off. And as you explore and go out into your day-to-day with these values, and I typically ask people to either have it on their phone or have it written down. And I get pictures from clients all the time, like, oh man, I had this amazing day. And they're holding up their values list, which I just get the biggest kick out of. But you identify what is important to you in that moment, and on the flip side of that, if shit's just going wrong and you find yourself in a hole and you can't dig yourself out, and you don't, where I was when I was 24, 25 years old, had I done this work ahead of that, I could have looked and understood really quickly that I wasn't living my values. It took me years to figure that out and build this filter. And ultimately, that's what I want for people, right? Is to not have to go through what I went through. And I know a lot of people, especially 08, 09, if you were in real estate, that killed themselves. They're not here anymore. And I wonder if they had a list like this and they have the entire waves method, and I'll get to the SOP, why that's important, but maybe they'd still be here. That's part of my why. They understand that they're not alone, and they're not the only ones that have these feelings, and they feel that disconnect, but they don't know who to talk to about it. Or they're considered weak, or there's just so many stigmas around it, and especially with men and mental health. But ultimately, before we get too far off track, the last piece of waves is you build your statement of purpose, and that's your SOP. And that is parts of your values, parts of your why, but it's that quick, if you're in sales, it's your elevator pitch, right? It's that like 2 to 3 sentence, this is who I am, this is why I show up in the world, this is who I want to be, this is who I serve. That's your SOP.
I had a chance to experience you doing a small workshop with my tribe as we went through this Waves method. And it's very, very powerful to keep front of mind, especially by the fact that you have an SOP at the end, allows you to have that one statement that really gives you a chance to look at what's going on, what you want, and then match it to your reality. Because I'd assume you'd feel very disconnected if you're not even close to what your values and your SOP is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what we saw in your workshop with your folks, we had a couple people share their SOP at the end, and we did this really briefly, and you start to see why these things take time. But it was not her SOP, if you remember. It was kind of a piece of her why. And that's why it's so important to have somebody, it doesn't have to be me as a coach, but somebody that, and I'd love to talk about why you shouldn't listen to your friends and family for advice, but have somebody that has no skin in the game looking at this with you so that you can call that person and go, I don't think that is your SOP, because what we heard in that, and it's very common, is it was who she served. It wasn't why she was serving them for herself. There's a big difference.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.